Funding for this program has been made possible in part by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Good evening and welcome to Education Conversation, an update on Regents reform. We're coming to you live from the WNED WBFO studios in downtown Buffalo. I'm Jim Ranney. In a moment, we'll hear from State Education Commissioner John King and Board of Regents Chancellor Emeritus Robert Bennett. We will be taking questions from our studio audience. Public school districts in Erie and Niagara counties were invited to send up to 3 representatives to this event. The rest of the audience is made up of parents from the District Parent Coordinating Council of Buffalo and members of the general public. Since registration exceeded our seating capacity of 300, the audience was selected by lottery. Everyone in the audience has been invited to submit a written question. WBFO WNED staff has collected the questions and are selecting them to ensure we cover a wide variety of topics and to avoid redundancies. I will ask as many questions as time permits, and I will also ask follow-ups in order to get precise answers. This forum is convened by WNED WBFO President and CEO Donald Boswell and Samuel Radford, President of the District Parent Coordinating Council of Buffalo. In full disclosure, Western New York Public Broadcasting receives about 9% of its funding from the state of New York through the Department of Education. Now, before we begin tonight, a quick update on how we got here. New York has joined most states in the nation in implementing the Common Core learning standards. The goal is to better define student expectations at each grade level and to better prepare them for college and careers. While the new standards have been praised by some, they have also raised great concern. Critics say tests aligned with the new standards put undue stress on students and put too much emphasis on test scores. Others say implementation of the new standards was too quick, leaving teachers unprepared. Let's begin our conversation by welcoming State Education Commissioner John King and Regents Chancellor Emeritus Robert Bennett. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Let me also quickly say that the weather tonight in Buffalo is, well, snowy to say the least. And I want to thank all the folks in our audience who braved the elements to be here this evening. Others are arriving as we speak. And if the folks at home see some empty seats in the audience, it's certainly not for lack of interest in this topic. It's simply because of the weather. And I hope everyone is careful if they are still heading down here. We are thankful that we're on both television and radio tonight and that folks can join us there on TV and radio. Commissioner King, you've been traveling across the state for the past several months, talking with parents, meeting with school administrators and teachers about the Common Core and other reform issues. You've received an earful on this topic and on this issue. Earlier this week, there was a day of action in opposition to some of these reforms. What do you tell parents and educators, students, and others who are concerned about Common Core and the reforms that we're seeing in education?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Appreciate the station hosting us this evening. Where I'd start is that the Common Core presents a tremendous opportunity for the country. You've got 45 states, the District of Columbia, the Department of Defense schools coming together for the first time around a common vision of the knowledge and skills that are required at each grade level for students to succeed in college and careers. In New York, we know we have work to do to ensure that every student has that opportunity to succeed after high school. Last year in New York State, we had a 74% graduation rate. A quarter of kids after 4 years of high school not ready to go on to college and careers with even a high school diploma. Last year in New York State, a majority of entering students in our community colleges were required to take remedial courses, high school classes for which they and their families paid college prices. So we know, despite lots of excellence in New York, we can do better. The Common Core is a path to doing better, to ensuring that all of our students have the skills they need when they leave us in high school. So part of the work of these forums, these conversations across the state, has been to share why we at the department and why the Board of Regents feel such a sense of urgency about moving the standards forward.
What about what you've heard, though? I mean, you've no doubt heard the concern. You've heard anger in some cases. What are you telling those folks who say, you know what, I'm not sure we're making right decisions here?
Well, there's been a variety of concerns, and also, I have to say, many expressions of support for the standards and real conviction about the urgency of ensuring that all of our students graduate prepared for college and career success. But certainly concerns, and they fall in different ranges. Some are a result of conflating the Common Core with other issues. We haven't added a single test at the state level as a result of the Common Core. Common Core is separate from testing. Now, we have aligned our tests to reflect the Common Core in 3rd through 8th grade, and over the next 4 years, we will align the high school Regents exams with the Common Core. But we haven't added testing at the state level as a result of the Common Core. So sometimes the conversation is focused on local assessments that are given, that local districts have decided to implement or have decided with their bargaining units to implement. And there's an opportunity, I think, for districts to reevaluate those local assessment decisions. Sometimes the Common Core gets conflated with teacher and principal evaluation. They're separate issues. It's important, we think, for teachers and principals to be evaluated based on how they're doing with implementation of the Common Core, whether that's the principal observing the teacher's practice in the classroom, is the teacher asking students to write more, to do more problem solving in math, and looking at student performance. Are students making growth against these standards that will ensure they're prepared for college and career success? But there are lots of local decisions in the evaluation system, and sometimes, again, people conflate those local decisions with the Common Core.
And we're going to talk about a lot of those issues that you raised as we go through this evening. Regent Bennett, you've heard the anger, you've heard the frustration. What are you telling folks, parents, teachers, students?
Well, the first thing I tell parents, starting with my daughter, because my 2 granddaughters are in 4th and 8th grade in Newport, is to go and see your teacher and ask a couple of questions about whether or not the teacher has benefited from any form of professional development over the last 2.5 years on how to implement the Common Core learning standards. And if the answer to that isn't satisfactory, then you need to go to the principal and find out what kind of professional development was done in this school for my children, so your teachers are teaching to the standards and not doing test prep. Having said that, both of my granddaughters have an assessment every Friday just to measure how they did that week. And it's kind of a non-event for them. I'm not even sure they call it a test. So that measuring progress for a child is been going on for a very long, long time. It's when it gets into what do we mean by high stakes and what does it mean for teachers' evaluation that it gets a little confused with the learning standards, I think. So I think the first thing for a parent to do is to ask their teacher of their children what kind of professional development has been done for that teacher.
We've got questions, obviously, from our audience tonight. The first one comes from a principal from Newfane who asks how you respond to critics who contend that reform agenda is a one-size-fits-all approach to change and therefore is not meeting the needs of many districts, especially schools in supportive communities prior to the reforms. Yeah. Is it one-size-fits-all?
It isn't. And again, this comes in part from conflating standards with curriculum. So sometimes people will say, well, because of the Common Core, there's this book that my child read in 7th grade, and that's about the Common Core. No, that's about curriculum. The Common Core lays out a set of standards, things like students will be able to write using evidence drawn from texts. Students will be able to apply fractions to solving real-world problems. Standards are about expectations. Now, curriculum, that's a local decision. And so there's a lot of variety. Certainly some districts have chosen to use curriculum materials that the state is providing, but not all districts have, and that's an option for districts. Professional development is a local decision. We've provided a tremendous amount of professional development as a state over the last 3 years to support the implementation of the Common Core. Just a few weeks ago, we had 1,000 educators from across the state in Albany for a week doing professional development, particularly focused on how to help struggling learners meet the higher standards of the Common Core. But again, professional development, that's a local decision. The evaluation law. Sometimes people will say, well, the evaluation law is one size fits all, but in fact, 80% of the evaluation decisions are made at the local level. So ultimately, this reform effort is about setting high expectations that will ensure our students are ready for college and career success, but then allowing local communities to make decisions about curriculum, professional development, or even the approach to evaluation.
A lot of questions tonight about testing, and the first one on the issue of testing comes from an educator from Buffalo who wants to know, why are we assessing students on the new standards so early when other states have chosen to wait?
Well, again, it's important to lay out the timeline. The Regents adopted the standards in 2010. The first assessments changed for 3rd through 8th graders in spring of 2013. The class that entered this year as freshmen in high school, they'll be the first class to graduate having taken Common Core Regents exams in 2017. That's a 7-year phase-in. Now, are there some folks who say we should have a longer phase-in? Yes. My worry is that each year we graduate another class of students who don't have the skills as writers, the communication skills, the math problem-solving skills. That's another class of students sent off to college or careers without the skills that they need. Now, when I visit other states or talk with educators from other states, what I hear in other states is the complaint that they're asked to teach to the Common Core, but giving assessments that are based on the old standards. And that would have made no sense. So the Board of Regents, I think, made the right decision with the department back in 2010 to a 7-year phase-in and to ensure that the assessments would reflect the standards that we expect to be taught in classrooms.
Are there any other benefits to being first with this or rolling it out perhaps earlier than other states beyond what you just said? Are there financial benefits to doing it or any other reason why the state wants to lead the way here?
Well, the reason to lead the way is because the right thing for students. We want students to have the experiences in the classroom that the Common Core calls for. And again, I've visited nearly 50 schools since the start of the school year. And I'm consistently impressed by the quality of work that I see in classrooms as teachers and students together tackle the Common Core.
Another question on testing, because we received many of them tonight. How many tests are directly tied to Common Core? You addressed this early on, but let's delve into it. How many tests that students now take are tied to Common Core?
Not a single one. The Common Core is not about testing. The Common Core is about standards. Now, we're required in New York State by federal law, a federal law that long predates the Common Core, No Child Left Behind law. We're required to give English and math assessments in 3rd through 8th grade. We're required to give science assessments, once in elementary school, once in middle school. We give those in 4th and 8th grade. We're required by federal law to give an English exam, a math exam, and a science exam at the high school level. All of those are required by federal law and have been for nearly a decade. We also in New York give high school exams in U.S. history and global studies. That's part of the Regents exam tradition that dates back to the 1860s. Those are the only required exams that New York State gives. Now, those exams, again, have been in place for nearly a decade. The Common Core hasn't added a single test. Now, so far, the 3rd through 8th grade tests that we give now reflect the Common Core, the standards we're teaching to in our schools. And over the next 4 years, the Regents exams, the high school exams, will begin to reflect the Common Core, starting with the algebra exam this year, which is typically given in 9th grade.
So these tests may become more rigorous under Common Core, but they're not necessarily new tests.
Exactly right.
What happens, another question from the audience, if students in a teacher's classroom refuse to take these state tests?
Well, there's no opting out of state tests in New York State, just as there's no opting out of biology class. The assessments are a part of the curriculum of the school. They're a part of the instructional process in the school. But the reason that students should participate in the assessment isn't because there's a rule about it, but it's because the assessments provide useful information at the classroom level, the school level, the district level, and ultimately at the state level about where students are in that trajectory to college and career success.
I know we'll have more questions, no doubt, as we go on about testing, but Regent Bennett, anything about testing that you want to add? Because it is one of the issues that often comes up when we talk about reforms in Common Core.
Well, some of the complaints that I've heard are that my child is under tremendous stress because he has to get a certain grade on this particular test. I would examine the nature of the stress and who's causing the stress, because I think that the days are long gone when you can teach to the test. That is not good teaching. And if teachers have received the training that they're entitled to receive on the Common Core learning standards that have been in abundance throughout the state, and at the local level in terms of what do these standards look like, why do we have the standards, what does it mean to teaching in the classroom in terms of how do you know when you've reached a standard? Because when the cut scores were made for the 3 through 8 test, 90 teachers spent a week in Albany and they looked at every single standard for every single grade that appeared on that test, and they asked the following questions. Was it appropriate to the standard? Was it a fair question? Was it a clear question? And then they concluded what should a child who has been taught to the standards should receive on that. And those recommendations were made in separate groups and as a total group. and sent to the commissioner, and there were no changes.
You are watching Education Conversation, an update on Regents reform with State Education Commissioner John King and Regents Chancellor Emeritus Robert Bennett. And again, we're coming to you live tonight from WNED and WBFO, our studios in downtown Buffalo. Back to the questions, and this question comes from a community member in the audience from Buffalo. Question about learning standards, and how will Common Core address the issue of less than a 25% graduation rate for minority males?
Well, ultimately, there's no silver bullet solution to the challenges we face in education. That said, what the Common Core offers is better preparation at every grade level to ensure that when students get to high school, they're prepared. I'll give you one example. One of the things that the Common Core emphasizes is the development of vocabulary and background knowledge. Well, there's decades of research suggesting that one of the key gaps for our least affluent students is that they arrive at school without having heard as many words as their more affluent peers. In fact, there's a famous Hart and Risley study that showed that less affluent kids arrive at school having heard 30 million fewer words than their affluent peers. And so the Common Core urges us to create language-rich environments where students can develop vocabulary, where they can learn background knowledge, where they can learn about history and science in the early grades, so that as they move forward, they can bring that vocabulary and background knowledge to bear as they improve their reading skills in the later grades. So again, there's no silver bullet. The whole community has to come together in support of schools. And we need expanded learning time for our students who struggle the most. We need summer programs because we know summer learning loss is a huge challenge for many of our students. We need school systems to engage parents effectively. It's critically important that school systems work with parent organizations like the District Parent Coordinating Council to think together about how parents and schools can support kids who are struggling. Again, no silver bullet solution, but certainly getting the instruction right that students receive in the classroom is part of how we tackle the achievement gap we face in terms of graduation rates, particularly for our young men of color.
Since we also oversee higher education and all teacher preparation programs, we've increased the standards for teacher preparation programs as well, and with a particular emphasis on urban teacher preparation programs so that they have a chance for more clinical experience, and once they get there, they actually have a mentor that takes care of them for the first 2 years in their experience so they don't drop out of teaching. In addition to that, any family support mechanism we can put in place, we should put in place, and I think people in the audience may be familiar with family support centers and the GAP initiative, which is now a Say Yes initiative, to provide the support to these families that are struggling and the students that are struggling from very serious poverty conditions. Nonetheless, they have the ability to learn. There's no doubt about that, but require maybe some more supports along the way, and the community should decide how that's going to look.
Is everything in place for that to happen right away, though? It seems like the standards are in place, the tests are being updated, but are those support systems in place so that these students can succeed now?
Some are and some aren't. I would say that what we're trying to do at the state level is convince the Commissioner of Health and Mental Health and the Office of Children and Families and the State Education Commissioner to do some joint planning, joint funding, and joint assessment of the connection that exists to recognize families as families and make sure that these kids spend a lot of time in school. So if that's the case, then we have to get a system in place. Quite frankly, the best system we had many years ago were community schools, the lighthouse schools, if you will, that they stay open until 9 o'clock and they're open on Saturdays. Cincinnati has probably the best model of that, where sometimes in the school there's teaching going on and sometimes in the school there's a whole lot of family support, including health and mental health services.
Question from a school administrator from Wilson. Three-part question here. What percentage of student success do you feel falls on the school system? What percentage is on the student, and what percentage is parent responsibility? School system first.
Mm-hmm. I have a friend who will say about marriage that it's important not to view it as 50-50, but 100-100. So that's a question where the real answer is 100-100-100. Right? Ultimately, everyone who's participating has to be committed to the outcome. Now that means that educators have to have the mindset that we're going to make every moment of instruction as meaningful as possible. When I was a principal in the high needs community in Boston, one of my things that I would emphasize to my teachers, we can't control all the things that happen outside of school in our kids' lives, but we can control what happens in the time that they're with us. And we as the adults can create a community that is challenging, rigorous, engaging, supportive. We can create an experience for them at school that's powerful and meaningful. Certainly parents have a critical role to play in helping their children to be successful. We need parents to work with their kids to create a good space to do homework, to support their kids with homework if they can, to create enrichment opportunities on the weekend and the summer, take kids to the museum every now and then instead of the movies, turn off the television, monitor the technology use. We need all parents to be engaged in that way. At the same time, we also know that not every kid has those adults at home, and that doesn't mean we can give up on them. We've got to create, as Chancellor Meredith said, we've got to create opportunities for them to get mentoring from other adults, supports from other adults in the community. And students need to have a vision of what's possible. We just had the PISA results come out that compare performance internationally. And unfortunately, the United States was in the middle of the pack at best. We have a lot of work to do to ensure that our students are ready to compete internationally. We also saw that there are many countries that have moved up in PISA results of late. The United States not one of those. One of the interesting findings was that students in Shanghai, which is a place that was very high performing on the PISA, students, when surveyed, would say, if I find that something's hard, I know that if I work at it, I can do better. That's the kind of sentiment we've got to develop in schools. We've got to help students see a challenge, a math problem they don't understand, a research project that's really difficult, see the challenge as an opportunity to apply themselves and to work hard, to get better with practice, to get support from the adults in their lives so that they can improve their performance. That kind of growth mindset is critical.
I think this is also a big moment for school leaders, as in principals. I believe it is their responsibility to establish a very welcoming culture for families. And that is more than a parent-teacher conference 2 or 3 times a year. It really is that we welcome you, we know you, and we know your child, and we're going to do everything we can to make you feel welcome in this particular school. A number of parents are afraid to go to a school because they don't feel welcome. And that's a culture that has to be embedded in our leadership training programs. I've asked that our folks in the department put 6 credit hours in the agenda for customer service. Because who, after all, is the customer? It's the student and their family. That's why we are doing what we're doing.
Question from a PTA member from the Niagara region tonight. How are you accounting for the fact that children are individuals and therefore do not all learn in the same way or at the same time, and many do not perform well with time testing? Absolutely right. Everyone's different and everyone responds differently to curriculum and standards.
That's right. And so we've got to create classroom environments that support all learners. Educators often talk about the importance of differentiation. And that's the idea that you've got to provide a range of learning experiences for students. Some students are going to learn better from the visual example. Some students are going to learn better from reading about a topic. You've got to create a learning environment where students have lots of access points to the content. We've got to create a learning environment where students feel a sense that through their hard work they can improve. Got to create a learning environment where students have a range of opportunities. We were at the BOCES earlier today talking with students from East and Lafayette who are in the BOCES program, and those students were talking about how much the career and technical education experiences have meant to them, how excited they are about participating. So we've got to create a range of experiences particularly in our high schools, so that students are engaged with school. But we know that when students graduate, they will graduate into a 21st century economy that demands of them readiness. They'll need writing skills, communication skills, math skills. They will need to be prepared to take credit-bearing courses in college or to pursue post-secondary training that will prepare them for a career. So yes, we've got to differentiate. We've got to support each student. But we can't accept that some students don't need to meet college and career-ready standards. All of our students need to be prepared for success.
I want to just comment on that because the other place we were visiting today with the superintendent in Buffalo was Lafayette High School, and we saw a classroom of 12 students. It was very clear that some of those students would progress faster than other students. And there were 2 instructors in the room. They knew that extremely well, and the time given to each student differed. And that was a very, very encouraging sign to see. On the career pathway part of it, we are really planning to expand career pathway opportunities as early as 8th grade, so that career readiness is more rigorous than college readiness, quite frankly. And we now have assessments that are very, very good in 13 categories of employment, driven by the employer community. So when a child graduates from a high school in New York State, I want them to know they've got to go on so that they can get a job. And in Rochester, for example, Monroe Community College and a whole series of employers have a compact ready there that have made it very clear to Rochester high school students that if you do these 4 things, you got a job. And that's very influential.
Question tonight from an educator from Buffalo. The question applies specifically to English language learners. Why are we forcing English language learners who have no prior schooling to take these standardized tests year after year?
So it's a challenge to figure out how to approach assessment for English language learners. I will say No Child Left Behind requires on grade level testing for English language learners, and has that requirement in part as a result of a tremendous amount of advocacy from the civil rights community that worried that before No Child Left Behind there were states in which English language learners were essentially rendered invisible. Schools that would describe their results and say, oh, we have great results here, but not have any of their English language learners participate in the assessments, particularly in the Southwest. And so the federal government and No Child Left Behind required on grade level assessment of English language learners. Now we translate many of our exams in New York State into multiple languages, but one of the challenges is the English language arts exam. We have a requirement that after students have been here for more than a year, they must take the English language arts exam in English. The Regents recently adopted a budget request to the legislature that would allow us to, for the first time, offer native language arts exams, so that a student who has recently arrived to the United States for their first couple of years in the United States would be able to take a literacy assessment in their native language, which will give us the opportunity to emphasize the development of that native language and support eventually of their English language acquisition. But it's a difficult balance to strike because you want to make sure that English language learners are a priority for schools, that they see that they're accountable for helping their English language learners develop their skills academically as well as their language skills.
This is Education Conversation, an update on Regents reform with State Education Commissioner John King and Regents Chancellor Emeritus Robert Bennett. We're coming to you live tonight from WNED and WBFO in downtown Buffalo. We'll continue our questions with a question from an educator in Marilla tonight. It has to do with special education students, Commissioner. What plans are being developed to accommodate students with severe disabilities to ensure that testing and therefore instructional content takes into consideration developmental abilities and making progress from their current level of functioning instead of imposing unrealistic guidelines?
Yeah. So you have a similar challenge here, right, of trying to determine for those students what are the right set of expectations. Now, we have a Committee on Special Education process that sets goals for individual students. Again, No Child Left Behind has very specific requirements. There's 1% of students that can take an alternate assessment, more of a portfolio assessment, those students with the most severe disabilities. And then historically, the U.S. Department of Education has allowed states to have another 2% of students take a modified assessment. And actually, the U.S. Department of Education is in the process of eliminating that 2% modified assessment, which was used in some states around the country, not in New York, because of a request from the civil rights community and the advocacy community for students with disabilities, who were concerned that that modified assessment was being used as a strategy by some states to not have students with disabilities get the benefit of the kinds of activities and learning experiences that happen in the general education curriculum. What the Board of Regents has asked us to do is to work with the U.S. Department of Education to explore the possibility of a percentage of students above that 1%, but with very significant disabilities, having the opportunity to take assessments at their instructional level rather than their chronological age. But we'll need the permission of the U.S. Department of Education to do that. And again, they'll be struggling with striking that right balance. There are students with disabilities who are achieving at levels that we didn't even know were possible 10 years ago because of the benefits of assistive technology. So it's really important that we make sure that we are very careful about these kinds of issues.
Are the expectations being raised, though, on those special ed students as well, like we're doing with others?
Sure, absolutely. And the key is to provide the right supports. And so as we build curriculum and instructional materials, we're building in scaffolding supports. We don't have enough yet. We need to build more of those. We have regional technical assistance centers that are providing professional development support focused on serving students with disabilities, but it's not enough. We need to invest more in professional development, and certainly I expect that the legislative discussions about the budget that are upcoming will include a lot of discussion around resources for professional development.
We are also looking very carefully at all high schools and all districts about transition planning for children that have been classified, and we want to know specifically, as they're sophomores, juniors, and seniors, what the expectations are after they leave high school, which they're entitled to 2 or 3 or 4 more years, some cases, to complete that. And we are also, just last week, created a special committee to look at higher education to determine how ready higher education institutions are to accept students with special needs or special accommodations that are required. When we did some hearings about 10 years ago, the picture there was not very encouraging. So a lot of these kids have great potential, and they need to be realized.
Questions tonight about privacy, gentlemen, and Common Core and what it means in terms of privacy. A question from a parent from Star Point. Could you please provide information or directions for parents who want to prevent their child's private information from being released in Bloom? And please explain, first of all, what In Bloom is and what's this concern about privacy?
Sure. Well, let me start with the Common Core and data systems are unrelated to each other. So the Common Core is about a set of standards that have been adopted across the country. Data systems are an entirely separate issue. Now, in New York, we've had a statewide data system for more than a decade. In that data system is information that we're required to collect by federal law, by state law, by federal regulation and state regulation. And we have the opportunity to create what we call parent and teacher portals, in which parents can have secure access to information about their child, and through which teachers can have secure access to information about their students. Now, most of our most affluent districts around the state already have parent portals and teacher portals. Typically, those portals are provided by third-party providers, that is, by companies or nonprofits or regional information centers that are providing a variety of services to districts. Those portals are secure, and one of the requirements under the federal law is that student data privacy must be maintained, and that data can only be accessed by those who have a legitimate use for that data in the education process. So that is by the parents or the teachers themselves. Now, what In Bloom is a nonprofit organization that was created to help states and districts to provide these kinds of teacher and parent portal tools in a more affordable way, and to ultimately create the opportunity for those portals to be joined with other data initiatives that states and districts might undertake. So a district, for example, with a parent portal might be able to not only have information that the state keeps, like student test scores, but also might be able to provide parents with information about tonight's homework through that parent portal. But it's important to say that this is a project in which the data are encrypted in storage and encrypted in transfer, which is actually a higher standard than many of the data systems that are in use throughout the state and country. This is a project where data cannot be sold or used for research or marketing purposes. The only purpose of the data in the In Bloom project is to create these parent and teacher portals, which again already exist in many of our most affluent districts, but not all districts have access to that resource.
Okay, so again, the notion that this information would be sold or shared by state ed to other outside agencies or businesses, that's not happening.
No, and it's very clear in all of our materials about this and agreements, but there's a lot of misinformation in social media, a lot of misinformation that's spread through Facebook and other places about this project and about data generally. That said, I do think there's an opportunity as we move into the legislative session to talk about ways that we can even further strengthen data security. Again, not just for data projects that the state is engaged in, but the many data projects that are happening in districts as well.
Question tonight about financing Common Core. It comes from a school board member from the Lewiston Porter Central School District. Commissioner King, are you aware that Common Core has been rolled out at a time of serious cuts to state educational funding? How are you working to ensure that districts have the resources needed for staff development, new curriculum, et cetera?
Well, there's no question that part of the challenge that we're in as a state is we're simultaneously implementing significantly higher standards to ensure students are ready for college and careers, implementing a new teacher and principal evaluation system that was adopted in law in 2010 and then revised in 2012, and still dealing with the effects of the fiscal crisis of 2008-9. School districts today are still receiving less money, all told, from the state than in 2007-8. So there's no question that creates lots of challenges for districts. At the same time, New York was fortunate to have Race to the Top funding, $700 million to put towards these efforts. Many of the states that are engaged in the same work on Common Core and teacher and principal evaluation don't have the benefit of Race to the Top dollars to support that work. The state has spent since 2010, when the board adopted the standards, billions of dollars on professional development, federal dollars, state dollars, as well as local dollars. But there's no question, as you raise standards, you need to provide support. And as I mentioned, I think in the legislative discussions that will be forthcoming, there'll be a lot of discussion about opportunities to invest even more in professional development, even more in curriculum materials so that districts have what they need, technology that might support students' success.
Plus, I think we want to, in this legislative session, make a proposal that higher education has a responsibility here to be helpful to districts. And I know in the case of Niagara University and Canisius, for example, that offer is there for professional development and for training at their expense. I think we'll still continue our network teams through the BOCES throughout the state. I think this is an era where shared services looms large in terms of what can districts do together without merging. That's a very bad word, apparently. But nonetheless, sharing healthcare costs or professional development, technology applications are all there because of the economic necessity. Having said that, I guess I would maybe go out on a limb a little bit, but I'm kind of predicting that 2014 might be a good state aid year.
One thing I would add is that professional development, yes, it's about resources, but it's also about what agreements have been made at the local level about time for professional development. Some districts set aside multiple professional development days that they've worked out with their bargaining units before the school year begins. Other districts, teachers arrive the day before kids arrive, and so there isn't that time for additional professional development. Some districts have collectively bargained common planning time every week for teams of teachers to work on planning. Other districts don't have that time. So one of the key questions at the local level is how do districts and bargaining units work together to make sure that there is adequate time for professional development, for collaborative planning, for teachers to sit and analyze student work and determine how they might better support student success.
And in Amherst, the leadership there basically asked the teachers, what do you need and how long do you need it for? And that started in late 2010 in terms of common planning time that they'd already been doing, but they intensified it when the learning standards were introduced. And somehow, some way, they found the time for teachers helping teachers and principals helping teachers. So that's a very important issue, time use, because sometimes one could conclude that the school day is not exactly as long as it should be.
What is state ed then doing? If those are perhaps good practices and they're working in some districts, obviously it's not happening in every district. What can you do at state ed to encourage that it happen, to provide perhaps those resources, again, to make it happen, so that the districts are all coming on together on this? It seems some districts are way ahead of others.
I think it's fair to say there is uneven implementation across the 700 districts. We've provided a lot of resources through Race to the Top and federal Title II-A funding, but we also have a program called the Strengthening Teacher and Leader Effectiveness Grants, where we've invested upwards of $70 million in districts creating opportunities for teacher leadership, where teachers are leading professional development for their colleagues, where teachers who are succeeding in their classrooms with the Common Core are sharing those best practices. We've made curriculum materials available through our engageny.org website as a voluntary resource. That website has had over 40 million page views since its launch. We also on that website have videos of great Common Core practice across the state, classrooms where the Common Core is happening. The BOCES are doing a lot of good work to bring districts together to support good professional development. So it's got to be a combination of the state's work and local work. But again, as we enter the budget cycle, I think you'll hear the regents and the department making a strong case for the investment of additional resources in professional development.
Every state aid request that we've advanced over the last 11 years has asked for, and for the most part received, a focus for more money for high-need districts such as Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Yonkers, and parts of New York City, and we intend to continue to do that, including more money for professional development.
This is Education Conversation, an update on Regents reform with State Education Commissioner John King and Regents Chancellor Emeritus Robert Bennett. We're coming to you live tonight from WNED WBFO in downtown Buffalo. Commissioner King, you mentioned Engage New York. A question here tonight from an educator from Williamsville Central Schools talking about Engage New York and some of these resources. The question is, why were early childhood experts not consulted in the development of the materials for Engage New York, since these materials are developmentally inappropriate as written? And then the question, would you be open to having expert teachers revise them in order to allow best practices to occur in early childhood classrooms? So the resource is there, but this teacher doesn't think they're very helpful.
Want to challenge the premise of the question. Actually, early childhood experts were involved in the development of the materials, and New York State educators have been involved in the development of the materials. The English language arts materials, actually the K through 2 materials, are being developed with Core Knowledge, which is an organization that has been working on building vocabulary and background knowledge in the early grades for many, many years. There are decades of research on the core knowledge approach of building background knowledge. Core knowledge materials were field tested and demonstrated positive impact on student achievement. For many, many years, folks have seen in the bookstore those books, What Every Third Grader Should Know, What Every Fourth Grader Should Know. Those books were developed by the same folks who developed the core knowledge materials. Sometimes people say, well, it's developmentally inappropriate for students to build background knowledge. That's wrong. The research doesn't support that. Actually, what the research supports that students should, as in the early grades, learn about the world, and they should participate in read-alouds where they hear texts read that are fiction and nonfiction and support their background knowledge. The core knowledge materials emphasize students' development of decoding skills so that they're able to tackle text and able to decode text. That's obviously critically important. Part of the challenge is the premise of the question, but the other piece I would say is, although we feel very strongly that the materials are an incredibly valuable resource, they are optional. It's up to districts to decide what curriculum they will use, and it's up to districts to decide how they want to adapt the materials. And educators in their classrooms, with the support of their principals and school and district leadership, will need to make decisions about what makes sense for their students.
New York was one of the few states in the learning standards to add pre-K, and we were glad to do it, and that was based on an awful lot of pre-K teachers. The sad news about New York State and pre-K that only about 65% of pre-K children eligible are getting funding for such pre-K programs throughout the state. My own opinion is that every 4-year-old in the state of New York should have full funding for an enriched pre-K experience so that they get to kindergarten, they're actually ready for kindergarten to have a very, very good experience. And I think there again, there might be an enhanced role for higher education in terms of how they're preparing teachers and leaders. Some leaders around the state simply don't support pre-K. I can't understand that at all, because the science of the brain is so convincing that that's the time really to have the most impact on a child is from pre-K to grade 3. And again, I would cite the Windermere Early Childhood Center as a research-based and fun environment for those little ones.
A question about teacher evaluations and how Common Core is used to evaluate the performance of teachers.
Well, the evaluation system has several components. One component, the largest component, 60% of the evaluation, is based largely in observations of teachers by their administrators or by peers as well, depending on what districts have bargained. Those observations are focused on the New York State teaching standards. The New York State teaching standards align very well with the Common Core, a focus on asking questions that will get students to think critically, a focus on student engagement and ensuring that students are actively engaged in their learning. 20% of the evaluation is based on locally selected measures of student performance. So districts and their bargaining units are working on how they will look at student performance for that 20%. And in the subjects like English language arts and math and certainly literacy and science and social studies, those locally selected measures should reflect the Common Core. And then there's 20% of the evaluation that's based on what we call state growth. For those teachers who are in grades 4 through 8, ELA and math, which is about 20% of the teachers, we generate a growth score based on how their students grew over the year compared to other students around the state. And that contributes 20% to the evaluation of those teachers. For the other 80% of teachers, those decisions are also made locally. Goals are set for student learning, and an agreement is made about what assessments will be used to assess progress towards that goal. That's a district decision, often made in conjunction with teachers and principals. So those decisions are made locally, but all of the evaluation work should reflect the Common Core. We all want students to think critically. We all want students to have those opportunities to write, to read challenging texts, so forth.
Does the Common Core require the evaluation of teachers, that these tests be used for that?
So again, it's important to separate. The Common Core is about standards. We have a teacher and principal evaluation law that was negotiated between the State Education Department, NYSET, the Statewide Teachers Union, the governor and legislature in 2010. Unfortunately, many districts were not able to reach agreement to move forward on evaluation. And so in 2012, Governor Cuomo intervened to ensure that we'd be able to move forward on the teacher and principal evaluation work. And today, all districts have a teacher and principal evaluation system in place consistent with that state law. But that's separate from the Common Core. Now, for those teachers who are in grades 4 through 8, English language arts and math, again, that's about 20% of teachers, their students' progress on the state assessments that reflected the Common Core is 20% of their evaluation.
Another question on testing tonight. It comes from a parent. Did not identify the town, but that's okay. Why can't we as parents and teachers see the state tests our children take and an explanation of their scores? This person goes on to say that they've tried to request copies of the test via the Freedom of Information Act, and they were ignored.
So all states have to make the decision about how many test items to release. Some states release none. Some states release a test every couple of years. Some states, like New York, release a percentage of the items. The reason we do that is that the more items you release, the more field testing you have to do. That is more opportunities where students are doing the test as a practice so that you can get information about the test items. We are very committed to trying to reduce the amount of time spent on field testing. So we make available 25% of the items. With those items, we provide the correct answers, the incorrect answers, an explanation of why the correct answers were correct, why the incorrect answers were incorrect, examples of student work at each grade level, guides to the assessments that lay out the criteria used to select every item on the test, the criteria used to select every passage on the test. Districts also get from their regional information centers or data centers item by item analysis, standard by standard for each student, and can get detailed analysis for that 25% of items that are released. We'd like to be able to release more. We actually have a budget request that we'll make that will allow us, we hope, to print more forms of the test, which will allow us to tackle the field testing problem, hopefully eliminate multiple choice field testing, standalone field testing, embed all of those field test questions in the multiple forms of the assessment, and that would allow us to release more items.
Chancellor Bennett on this?
Well, as reimbursement goes from state appropriations for test preparation, in New York we have 3.5 million students that take our tests. New York ranks pretty low in terms of the state providing funds to prepare tests in the first place. So banking questions is something that is required.
Question tonight from a parent in Buffalo who wants to know, what does Common Core have for supporting students that are 1 homeschooled, 2 on suspension, and 3 out of school due to a medical condition? So let's take those one at a time. Homeschooling.
Yeah. Well, one of the great opportunities with the Common Core is that you now have all states, virtually all states, 45 states, working together to produce materials that will support student learning. And so there's a growing collection of resources around the Common Core, many of which are free resources, including the full pre-K through 12th grade curriculum that we're developing at the state level. And those materials can be accessed for free by families that are homeschooling or by those who are charged with providing instructional support for students who are suspended or who have severe medical needs. But again, the key will be professional development for those who are charged with supporting those students who are suspended or who have those severe medical needs, so that they can adapt the instructional materials, whether it's the ones the state has provided or ones that a district is providing.
Yeah.
Certainly in higher education, online learning has exploded in the last 5 years. And that may be a good thing or not such a good thing, but in terms of the P-12 system, and particularly high school, online learning is inevitable, I think, in terms of accessing the internet for instruction and guidance and so on and so forth, and that might address part of that question. But as a separate item in terms of technology applications and the readiness of a student to use the technology is way down the road. I mean, I think students, I know my 4th grade granddaughter told me how to use the iPad. I said, what are all these icons? And she said, you only have to worry about one. I said, which one? She said, it says mail. That's it. You don't have to worry about anything else, and that's all I worry about. Point made, online learning is coming to P-12.
Question again tonight from a parent in Iroquois, and it has to do with testing. This parent writes that my daughter will enter kindergarten in the fall of 2014. While this should be an exciting time period and transition for our family, my husband and I have become increasingly concerned at the curriculum and testing that awaits their daughter. What do you say to tax-paying parents who are strongly considering opting out of the system?
Well, a few things. One is there are no state tests in kindergarten. But of course, as the Chancellor Emeritus described, kindergarten teachers will have assessments to measure whether or not students are making progress. And those assessments often will be performance-based, where a teacher may sit with a student to look at a book together, to get a sense of the student's familiarity with letters, early reading skills. Teacher may sit with a student to do math work together, get a sense of their number sense, their knowledge of shapes and colors and so forth. So in the early grades, those decisions about assessment and curriculum are made locally. I would encourage the parent to talk with the local school district about how they approach assessment in K through 2 and how they approach curriculum in K through 2. The assessments that we give, as I've described, in 3rd grade all the way through 11th grade are the ones that are federally required, except for those 2 high school history exams, and have been for a long time. The key is that the tests shouldn't define the instruction that students receive. The standards should define the instruction that students receive. And we do worry that test prep and more testing than is needed may be occurring in some schools and districts around New York and around the country. And I think we've got to work collectively as an education sector to make sure that we have the minimum amount of testing necessary to inform good decision making.
Do you think we have too much testing now?
Again, it varies tremendously district to district. We have a set of state tests that are required by federal law, but beyond that, districts are making those decisions. Are there some districts that have too many assessments? Yes. Is that true of every district? Absolutely not.
Would you support one number, a standard, for all New York schools? Yes, the federal ones have to be there, they're required, and we also recommend this and no more.
Yeah. No, because each district and school needs to be able to make those decisions. I think that element of local control around curriculum, around assessment, around professional development is important. That said, I think you'll see, moving forward into the legislative session, a lot of discussion about how we might constrain perhaps some of those choices in K through 2 so that in those early grades, people are focused on more the performance-based assessments that I was describing rather than standardized tests, which obviously we don't have as a state in K through 2, but some districts may be using.
Chancellor Bennett.
Well,
Pearson Education, under investigation. Pearson Education, under investigation. Why won't you talk about the subpoenas and the investigation? It's been going on for 3 years now. Search New York Times. Pearson Education, under investigation.
Mr. Bennett, you can continue on, please, if you would. We apologize for the disruption. That's okay. You were talking more, though, about the...
I would advise, not a loud voice, I would advise that parent to meet with the teacher and to find out whether that teacher is certified in early childhood education. And I would ask the questions. What's your approach to assessments for my child, and how frequent are they going to be, and what are you going to learn from it? How is that going to help my child learn more, and what can I do to help at home? But the first thing is, are you certified as an early childhood teacher?
In terms of what you're often hearing from parents and from teachers and from students in some case, a lot of stress, in some cases a lot of fear about Common Core and these new standards. What can you tell people who are, looking at these new requirements fearfully and with great trepidation?
Well, a couple things I'd point them towards. One is, got to make sure that we focus on the standards, and I would encourage folks to actually read the standards and the kinds of things they ask students to do, and I think they'll see that the standards are asking for exactly the kinds of skills that students need for later success. Two, I was in Massachusetts, I was a teacher in Massachusetts when they dramatically raised their standards in the mid-90s. And they heard many of the same concerns that we hear today. They heard people saying the standards are too high, the tests are too hard, our kids will never be able to meet these higher expectations. And in fact, Massachusetts remained resolute. Today, Massachusetts is performing at the top of the nation on the NAEP assessment, which is the gold standard for comparing performance across states. So it is possible to have students achieve at a higher level. In fact, the Board of Regents heard similar things when they began the phase out of the local diploma. People said graduation rates will plummet. New York students will never be able to meet a higher standard. And in fact, graduation rates have gone up with the phase out of the local diploma. So New York State educators have demonstrated that students can meet higher standards. The other observation I'd make, we just had the NAEP results, again, the gold standard for comparing performance across states, come out. The two places that had the largest gains on the NAEP, in contrast to New York, which has been essentially flat for a decade, the two places that had the largest gains were the two places that are ahead of us in the work on teacher and principal evaluation and are doing the work on the Common Core, Tennessee and the District of Columbia. They saw very significant gains because they are working towards a higher set of standards. They are using teacher and principal evaluation as a tool for support for teachers to ensure continuous improvement of the instruction students receive. So anxiety is inevitable when you raise standards, but I would encourage folks to remain hopeful and to look for good things to happen in classrooms.
Commissioner King, thank you very much. Regent Bennett, thank you very much. We're going to take a short break here because this will bring our television broadcast to an end. We want to thank Commissioner John King and Regents Chancellor Emeritus Robert Bennett for joining us. We also thank Samuel Radford of the District Parent Coordinating Council of Buffalo and everyone in our studio audience. And we want to thank you for watching at home. Our program will continue live on WBFO 88.7 FM and WBFO.org in just a moment. For now, I'm Jim Ranney. Good night.
Funding for this program has been made possible in part by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.